Welcome back to Learning with me, Miss Killen here at MPB. We're in our last unit of Algebra 1, statistics with two variables. So I want us to look at our lesson 1. It's relationships between two categorical variables. I can create and use a two-way frequency table to interpret and summarize data. We're looking at SID 5. So let's go ahead and jump in and see what we've got. We have some new vocabulary. I'm almost positive that we've not had this vocabulary yet in our course, so we want to make sure that we're putting this down on our vocabulary page or wherever you're keeping your new terminology. We have a two-way frequency table. We're looking at marginal frequencies. That marginal is going to help us with those frequencies. We have relative frequency, contingency tables, and a joint frequency. So let's jump in and see what we've got. A two-way table is a visual representation of the frequencies of each categorical variable, sometimes called a contingency table. Usually they're seen with columns and rows. So we've got bowling pins, new and old, and total. We've got pins, new and old, and total. And then we have the totals of the totals. So this is our two-way table. So we've got a marginal frequency, the total frequency of any row or any column. So let's look at these. So we have our males that are dogs or cats, we have our females which are dogs or cats, and then we have our totals. So when we look at our marginal frequency, we're looking at these. They are the margins of the tables. They're the sum of the joint frequencies, the males that are dogs and cats, or females that are dogs and cats. The counts within the table cells, most times they are labeled the totals. So we have our joint frequency, the number of times a combination of two or more are shown. They join two categories together. It is what shows the amount of two categories. For instance, we've got boys that are clowns, which is 3. We have boys which are tightrope walkers, which are 8. Then we have girls which are our elephant trainers, or our girls which are clowns. So it is showing what these two different categories are, and when we put them together, this is the number that we are coming up with. So our next one is our relative frequencies. Okay, you can calculate this by dividing each count by the overall total. So I want us to go ahead and get these. So we need to know that our total of totals is our 100% or our 1.0. So then when I look at the boys who are clowns, there are 3 of them. So I take 3 divided by 20, and I'm going to get 0.15. I look at my boys who are elephant trainers, and that is going to be 2 of 20, and that's going to be 0.10. The tightrope walkers, which is 8 of 20, and that's going to be 0.40. So let's get the girls now. The girls who are clowns, we're going to divide 2 divided by 20, which is 0.10. The elephant trainers, we're going to divide that 4 by 20, and that's going to be 0.20. And then we have the tightrope walkers. So we divide that 1 by 20, and I get 0.05. Now let's look at our totals. Our totals, when we add them up, they all equal 20. 13 plus 7 equals 20. 5 plus 6 plus 9 equals 20. So let's find out what those percents are. So I have 5 divided by 20, which is going to be 0.25. 6 divided by 20, which is 0.30. And 9 divided by 20 is 0.45. Now, the funny thing about this is, if I added 0.25, 0.30, 0.45, I added them up, I would get 1. So let's look at these other totals. 13 divided by 20 is going to be 0.65, and 7 divided by 20 is 0.35. I add those up, I also get a 1. All of these different points would add up to be 1. So we want to make sure that we're understanding how we're getting these decimals for this relative frequency. Good job. Now, let's do some practice. The orders at a concession stand during the month of September are shown in the table. Change each joint frequency to a relative frequency. So we have sodas and waters and no drinks at all. We have hot dogs and hamburgers and no food at all. And then we have our totals. So for me to get this relative frequency, I've got to look at the total of my totals, which is going to be this 500. So what we're going to do is we're going to take each one of these and we're going to divide them by 500. So on your paper, I want you to do this. I'm going to do this up here on the board. And when we're finished, I want us to come back and compare. So here we go. Check yours, see if yours are the same as mine. If not, go back and look at those division and see if maybe something got put in a different spot. And when you add up your totals in your points, it should be 1. So that's how we change from joint frequencies to relative frequencies. All right, so the first thing it says, put an X by all the marginal frequencies. So here's a marginal frequency. Let's do a different color just so we can show a little difference. Let's do green. So here's a marginal frequency, or excuse me, a marginal frequency. Here's a marginal frequency. Here's a marginal, and here's a marginal. So we have our joint frequencies, which is our 122, the 58, the 12, the 0. We have our relative frequencies as our decimals, and then we have our marginal frequencies, which are in our marginals. So here we go. Which statements are true about the concession stand sales for the month of September? Number 1, the number of sales of hamburgers and water combination was 58. Is that true? So I'm going to go over here to hamburgers and then run all the way over to water. Well, it is 58, so this one is true. All right, number 2, the percent of hot dog sales was less than the percent of burger sales. Well, let's see. Hot dog sales, which when we turn this into a percentage would be 42.4. 42.4. And then when you take the burger sales and turn that into percentage, which is 34%, so it says that the hot dog sales was less. That is not true. So let's look at number 3. The number of drink sales with no food was less than the number of food sales with no drink. So let's see. Drink sales with no food. So drink sales with no food. Drink sales with no food would be here, which is 0. And then we have food sales with no drink. So food sales with no drink would be here. So that is not true as well. So then it says the percent of sales of the hot dog and soda combo was greater than 30% of all sales. Well, let's see. So I have hot dog and soda combo. Hot dog and soda combo. This is 24.4%. So then it says it is greater than 30% of all sales. Well, it's not even 30%. So it's 24.4. That is definitely not true. So let's look at number 5. The percent of sales of burgers and water combo is less than 20%. So we've got burgers and water. Let's see. Turn this into a percentage, which is 11.6. It's less than 20. This one is true as well. So this is how we're using those relative frequencies. This is how we're using those joint frequencies. So you need to make sure that you can read cross and then down, or maybe down and then cross, and be able to see what those numbers are and those frequencies would be. All right, so here we go. 2020 MLB ballparks. We have grass, artificial turf. We have open and retractable and fixed tops. So let's see. It says compute the joint and marginal relative frequencies in the table. As you do it on your paper, I'm going to work it up here, and then we'll compare and see what we've got. All right, let's double check. I'm going to put that 25 and divide it by 30, and I get 83.3. Now, Ms. Killen, when I take 0.83 and I add 0.162, I'm not necessarily getting that 1? You're not, because when you got this decimal right here, it's a repeating decimal. So when we have that repeating decimal, we have to take in consideration that we did some rounding. So sometimes it's going to be that 0.99999. And with that instance, you know that there was some rounding. That was a good question. All right, so now that we've computed these, let's see what else we have to answer. How many open artificial turf ballparks are there? Well, how many open artificial ballparks are there? Let's see, open artificial turf, there are 0, because I would go open, I would go down, and then go over to artificial. All right, so let's see what the next one asks. It says, what % is the retractable turf ballparks? So I'm going to look at retractable and go all the way down to turf. I'm going to turn that 13 into a percent. So it's going to be 13%. So then let's go to our next one. What % of the ballparks have grass? So then I'm going to look at all the different ballparks and go over to grass, and that is going to change that 0.83 to a percent. So 83% of the ballparks, well, we can't read that. 83% of the ballparks have grass. So it's a really good way for us to, 1, get used to reading our graphs, and 2, looking at the different percentages and then looking at the different numbers. On the table, place all relative frequencies in the box. So my relative frequencies are what? All of my decimal numbers. This is the relative frequencies. So we want to make sure that we're remembering what relative frequencies are, what marginal frequencies are, what joint frequencies are. So we want to make sure that we're understanding those. Good job. All right, time for you to master. A student in Mr. Gary's 3rd period class surveyed the class to learn whether females or males play more video games. Answer the questions using the results displayed in the two-way table. So we have plays less than an hour, plays an hour or longer. All right, so we have our 4 different questions. So you and your table partner, go ahead and answer these questions using the table. Once you've gotten done, come back to me and let's see what we've got. Okay, Mr. Gary's 3rd period class was surveyed. So let's see what these questions are asking us. Of the students surveyed, what % are females? So I'm looking at females, and the % of females, we are taking 11 out of the 26, and I have 42%. Number 2, of all who played for an hour or longer, what % are males? So I'm looking at males that played for an hour or longer, and I'm taking that of 10 and getting that %, and it's going to be between 76 and 77%. There is a decimal, so that's why I put between 76 and 77%, because sometimes when you have to answer these questions, you'll have a range of percentages. So I wanted us to make sure that we are understanding how we can read that range of percentages. That was good. Let's look at number 3. What % of the students surveyed are males that play less than an hour? So males that played less than an hour, we're going to take that and turn it into a percentage, and we would take that and have 19.2%. And then let's get our last one. What % of the students surveyed are females that play more than an hour? So females that play more than an hour, we're going to turn that into a %, and we're looking at 31%. So we're having to make sure that we're understanding how to read from side and then go up, or go up and then go back to the side, depending on what categories that we're having to use. Good job. We don't want to forget what a two-way table is, how it's showing different categories and how they are put together, what our marginal frequency is, what our joint and relative frequencies are, and how we're calculating these different frequencies by getting percentages and dividing by the total. I am so glad that you're here to learn this last unit of Algebra 1 with me. I'm having a great time, and as always, have a great day.